On a backwater of the Murray near the South Australia-New South Wales border, there's some serious engineering going on.
When we started, there was absolutely nothing other than the natural environment. So we came in and we had to build some access roads to actually get to this place.
Over the past few months, 19-metre-long sheets of steel have been rammed into the Chowilla Creek bed to fence out the water and allow work on a 3-storey concrete construction.
There was a lot of sludge in there initially, which we had to remove until we got to suitable ground conditions.
What's being built is known as the Chowilla Regulator, and it's the latest piece of an increasingly complex infrastructure jigsaw intended to satisfy the needs of both irrigation and the environment.
This is an extremely important area in terms of its rich biodiversity. It is a Ramsar site and recognised internationally for its biodiversity.
The Chowilla floodplain spreads over 18,000 hectares in 3 states and is sometimes referred to as a kidney of the river because of its role in filtering and cleaning water. During the epic drought in the first decade of this century, it was hammered, with the most obvious sign being the demise of red gums that in some cases were hundreds of years old. But the story of Chowilla's suffering is also a story about river management. For more than 100 years, the engineering emphasis on the Murray has been about putting as much water as possible in the main channel. And the simple reason for that is that it's easier for irrigators to access. To find out how successful that policy has been, consider this. Scientists believe that under natural conditions, the river would have broken its banks and flooded areas like Chowilla every 2nd or 3rd year. Now that happens only once a decade. Which is why Chowilla is one of 6 so-called icon sites in the basin, identified in the Living Murray program in 2004. The theory being, if water could be found to restore the health of these sites, then generally the rivers would be in good shape. However, finding enough water to create medium or even small regular flows was difficult. So the regulator on Chowilla Creek is designed to make a small amount of water go further by basically blocking the creek so the water spills out of the channel and onto the floodplain.
The idea is that the water on the upstream side of this regulator can actually get raised, and that is to water a big floodplain that lies on the upstream side of the regulator. So the downstream side will still remain the same, but the upstream side will get flooded every so often.
This aerial map shows what Chowilla looks like when 60,000 megalitres of water per day is flowing into the channels and lagoons, about half of what's needed to flood it. However, this is what it looks like when 20,000 megalitres per day is flowing, which is more than currently in the river. This is what scientists and engineers believe will happen to that 20,000 megalitre flow when the regulator is used, essentially reversing almost 100 years of river policy to create floods, not mitigate against them.
And that's really been the culture of river management globally for some time. This has really turned that on its head in that we're now seeking to increase the frequency of overbank flow.
While those engineering river solutions believe this gives the wetlands a chance to receive the smaller and medium flows it needs to survive, others are unconvinced.
This approach of building canals and weirs and pumps on the floodplain, while beguiling, is very, very risky, and there's a number of important factors that those promoting this as a solution to conserving the river environment simply haven't thought through.
Jamie Pittock from the Australian National University is an expert in water economics and believes by re-engineering flows to wetlands, authorities are trying to find an out to providing enough water for the environment.
Our concern is that these works and measures will either directly prevent them being wetted and surviving as wetlands, and secondarily, by enabling the politicians to take more water away from the river, that they reduce the likelihood of there ever being large enough flows to properly and regularly wet these ecosystems.
Dr. Pittock argues by far the cheapest way to put water onto floodplains is to buy it on the open market. That's something the federal government has made clear in its Basin plan is a last option. Instead, it's offering the states hundreds of millions of dollars for works to enhance the environmental flows.
We have to make sure that it spreads as far as possible. And the way in which we can do that for our precious floodplain areas is to put in place environmental works and measures that allow us to spread that water over the floodplains. Now,
this week, the Premier announced $100 million in new money from the Commonwealth to build regulators at Pike and Catarapco floodplains in the Riverlands, which will be at least the equal of the Chowilla construction.
We negotiated that as a consequence of the Basin plan. We knew that there were certain elements of the environment that needed that extra bit of help, and one of the ways you get that extra bit of help is to put in place intelligent conservation infrastructure that allows the water to go a whole lot further.
The new works are still on the drawing board. The Chowilla regulator should be finished in 12 months. The best science suggests, despite the large investment, the regulator will only be used for a few weeks every 2 or 3 years. Long-term river watchers believe its construction, like the Basin plan itself, is changing the culture of river management.
With tools like the Chowilla regulator, which gives you river regulation scale capacity to have environmental outcomes, and the vast environmental water holdings, it's certainly given us opportunities that were not available previously, and the whole paradigm of operating the river is changing.